All right, being it's 6:01, we'll start this week's June 18th meeting of the Charter Review Committee, being 6 o'clock. And per the agenda, if everyone would join me, we'll have a pledge of allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Michelle, for the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
Are there any omissions, questions? Things that need to be added, corrections, anything of that nature?
I
Martha?
just wanted to ask you what you think of adding discussion items, a renumbered, reformatted charter. And I wondered if we would put in revision 240602-2, which was a number on the bottom of that. Revision.
I apologize, Martha, what are you saying on page 2?
It is, sorry,
Page 2?
Yeah.
Okay,
at the bottom, the
At the
last
bottom, okay.
paragraph.
and your hope is to,
Identify the renumbered, reformatted charter,
okay,
in parentheses, revision 240602-2. Parentheses.
I can do that.
Okay,
Michelle, you have no problem doing that? for
That's
Martha?
easy peasy.
All right, I like to hear that, that's very nice. Oh, you all set with that?
yep, thank you.
Very good. Ms. Fulton, Mr. Hutchinson, did you have something, or are you just waving hello?
I was saying hi to Mike.
All right, very good.
And hi. to Nancy.
All right, very good. I felt a little excluded there. I was hoping you had a question. All right, anyone on Zoom have any questions about the minutes at this time? If not. I'll
No, sir.
entertain a- Who's on Zoom? Is it Mr. Paislin? and
Yeah, just Pfizer. I don't know who RF iPhone is.
Tim Lawler.
Oh, Tim Law, okay.
Mr. Lawler.
Thanks for joining, Tim.
I am joining. I'm on my way to get there. I'm just gonna be a little late. I'm on my way home right now.
Take your time. Don't rush. We're here.
Okay.
So there's a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
Mr. Bolton, Ms. Boltrain, seconded by
I'll
Mr. Bolton. No further discussion on the minutes. I'll take a vote. Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Ms. Cavaco? Not seeing Ms. Cavaco at this time. Mr. Costello is a yes. Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr.
I'm right
Hutchinson?
here. Sorry.
Oh, Betty's here. Oh, very good. Betty, did you have an opportunity to review the minutes?
I did.
Okay, what is your thoughts?
Oh,
Good vote. You gonna abstain or?
I am going to abstain.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Welcome tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you have an opportunity, Mr. Levin, to go back? You got Ms. Cavaco?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Hutchinson? Do we leave off with you? Or did you- Yes, for the minutes.
I voted yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Levin?
Yes.
Mr. Pisa?
Yes.
And Ms. Boltrain?
Yes.
Okay, very good. You have all that, Mr. Levin? We're good?
Yep, well set.
Okay, any public comment at this time on anything that we're gonna speak about tonight or anything at all? Any public comment on Zoom?
No, I don't see anybody.
All right. We can come back to that if someone has any interest in public comment throughout the meeting. Okay, let's go right into item 5, discussion items. Review and discuss the reorganized, renumbered charter. We talked about that in a great deal last meeting 2 weeks ago. I don't know if everyone has had an opportunity to review some of the material we put out. And at least form an opinion on what we have to date and how we may go forward and either tweak that or continue with what we had put together Mr. Bolton, Mr. Pies, and Mr. Levin, and myself, in a work group format. If anyone
I
has
have a
any-
comment.
Mr.
I'm sorry?
I said I have a comment.
Oh, very good. Go right ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
I'm sorry, my phone is acting kind of funky.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say, I think you guys did a great job pulling it all together. It's an easier read than the last go round that we had on the last charter, actually. So hopefully, it'll sail through town meeting, but I'm wondering, have we decided if we're going to move it as a group of changes, or are we doing it all separately?
Well, that's interesting, Betty, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but we had our second meeting today prior to this meeting with town council, and this particular meeting, we had the opportunity, the town clerk sat in and gave us some advice. But Mr. Levin, the clerk joined, and Mr. Bolton, the vice chair, and myself, so we spent another hour plus, might have been close to an hour and a half, talking about that very topic, so I think
Okay,
that's probably gonna dominate, the majority of this meeting, and would be looking for discussion and approval or suggestions from the rest of the committee on how we hope to do it, but I think we have a pretty good preliminary structure put together, and I can let either Mr. Levin or Mr. Bolton expand on it if they wish.
So let me explain to you what's in front of you as far as the charter. The last time we were here,
I'm sorry?
I think Tim had something he
oh,
wanted.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Tim.
sorry, Tim, go right ahead.
Yes, I have a comment, Mr. Chairman. Again,
Go right ahead.
I want to mirror Betty's comments. You guys did a great job in putting this together. I know you spent a lot of time doing it, and a lot of diligence. Just great job. Great job.
I appreciate that, and I thank both you and Ms. Cavaco, and on behalf of the working group, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Levin, Mr. Pizer, and myself, we appreciate that. I think the work that they did to get this laid out, took the place of several meetings, and it put us in a very good position to continue and get this thing over the finish line, so they deserve a ton of credit. And I think now with the group and their input, we can really finalize this thing, and I think to Betty's point, I think I feel very comfortable going to town meeting with this document. I think it's gonna get a very positive response, so there's some work to do, don't get me wrong, but I think we're over a few hurdles, so thank you very much for those kind words.
Fine.
All right, Mr. Levin, go right ahead. Oh, Ms. Boltran, go right ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't know when I should mention this during the meeting, but I do want to talk about the version here, and I do have a number of comments.
Yeah.
That's fine, and I appreciate it.
I just want to explain to you what you have,
We'll let Mr. Levin explain to see what he has,
and then,
I think I know it.
Steve can give you some of the strategy behind it.
and some of the questions might fall by the wayside, you may get some stuff answered, but feel free, ask anything you want, because this is the last couple of meetings here that we want to get all this out, so everyone's happy. Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes, is the most recent email version?
Yes, this is the version that I sent to you guys the other day.
So, Mr. Levin, go right
Can
ahead.
we identify that as 6.14.24? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
that I got this morning.
yeah, you got from Michelle printed, right? So what you have here is the document that we talked about the last time we were here was the document as proposed. And it was done that way because we had a different strategy about the way we were going to present it to town meeting. After the discussion last time with council and us, we changed our strategy. So because of that, we had to go take that document, the reorganization document, and Steve did all this work. He gets all the credit for it. If we have to get him a C&I dog, we may have to. We have to put that in next year's budget. He went through and took all the pieces that we changed whether they were deletes, grammatical changes, punctuation changes, whatever change you think. And he added them back into that document. And he made the decision about, for example, we deleted something about the Department of Public Works. And we put that back where if for some reason town meeting says we don't want to take that out, it's already in the charter that supports our reorganization. And that's what you have here. The caveat is, we're not sure we have all the changes here. And personally, I'm gonna ask everybody to take this and look through it, look at the minutes, whatever you can. And if you see anything that you think we missed, communicate it to myself and Al, whoever, will figure that out. And we will then hopefully make the final document that has all those changes. So that's all I'm trying to do is explain to you. Steve can more explain to you what he did and some of the strategy we had with legal counsel and town clerk this afternoon.
Do you feel comfortable, Steve, to bring us up to speed? Mr. Hammond, before we start.
Steve starts, just a question about this meeting. You had a meeting before the last meeting, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
And then that's when you said your strategy changed. Now, did anything different come out of today's meeting?
I'll let Steve
Or
answer.
he's gonna answer
I'll
that.
let Steve
Okay.
do that.
So let's start with yes. So the first thing is the last version was done to give everyone an idea as to what chapter sections might look like of a reordered charter. And again, as Mr. Levin said, didn't have everything in it. It was just more of a structural document to get the idea so that we could get the sense as to whether or not the committee felt comfortable with the way we were lumping things together. Because that's how we had worked on things, with the idea of creating sections where things worked together, so that when you went to look to find something about committees, there was a chapter on committees, not a reference to a committee in chapter 2, and then another one in chapter 4, another one in chapter 5, another one in chapter 8. So that was what that was done. As Mr. Levin said, after we met with council, we talked about how to present all of that. And we had that discussion last time, and the discussion again just before this meeting. And what we felt would be the best way to do this would be to create a couple of different motions. So the number of motions that we presented at the town meeting, nowhere near the number of last time, the 37, the last time the charter went before the town meeting. So instead, what we thought is the first motion that would be created would be to reorder the charter. Our existing
I think you meant article.
motions to sign the article,
Okay,
yes,
fine.
to reorder the charter. So in other words, reorder the, our
Numbers?
current existing charter,
Yeah.
as if no changes were made,
Just making sure.
just absolutely reorder it.
Mhm.
And if nothing else happens, then at least things are now moved together and grouped together in a more cohesive way.
Yep.
This document that you were provided is that reordered charter. So this document, again, with the caveat, as Mr. Levin said, sorry, keep doing it.
That's fine.
As Mr. Levin said, I'm not sure, just because of the way the various prior versions that we have electronically had things, I wanted to make, I don't know that everything and every change is in this document. I tried, but I need some other sets of eyes, because after a while, forest and trees and all of that.
Yeah.
But I went through, so for example, as was said, we as a group voted to recommend taking out specific departments under the town manager, under the basis that that's an authority, the creation and the removal is something that's in the charter already as the town manager with select board approvals authority. However, recognizing that town meeting is the ultimate decider here. And town meeting may say, you know what, we don't really like that. We would prefer that those sections remained in. So if those sections remained in, I wanted to put them back into the sense that said, okay, if we do, I want them at least in the reordered place. So for example, where we had created that chapter, and it's chapter chapter 5, town administration. We had town manager. If you now look, you'll now see sections that say, section 2 says establishment and scope of Department of Finance. There should be a section 3, and again, I apologize, this was automatically numbered by the computer system. So there is actually a section 3 that will be in there that actually says the Director of Department of Finance. Section 4 is establishment and scope of the Department in Planning and Development. There's actually a section 5 that is the Director of Planning and Community Development. And then I believe there's actually a section 6 that says Department of Public Works. So I put those back, and so please don't go exclusively by the table of contents, because the table of contents does not electronically recognize some things. It's a formatting issue, but it's definitely in there. So.
If I
Mr. Hammond,
may,
please.
you were talking about section 5.
Yeah,
Chapter 5, Town Administration, Section 1, Town Manager. Then you get on to appointment, the very first section, subsection is 3-4-1. That's where that section used to be. Right.
correct. So,
So you moved it, but you didn't renumber it.
but I didn't renumber it. So everything in this charter has its original number to it. So that if anybody is looking and wants to know where it came from, they can compare it. So they can do what I did, which was then say, okay, I'm taking this document and I'm comparing it to the hard copy of our current charter. Someone says, okay, I want to, here it is. I can at least remember where it was. The reason again being that we're not going to renumber the charter until town meeting has voted on everything, and then we'll know what the actual real numbers are. So renumbering it is kind of nonsensical because it doesn't really make sense until we know what is and isn't accepted.
Yeah.
But I kept the original numbers in here so that everybody could figure, okay, wait a minute, you changed it, where was it? They can find it. If they're comfortable with our current document, they can find it. So that's what this document is. Now, again, we need to double check and make sure that all changes are made and that all of the sections from the original charter are in this. I believe they all are, because what I went and did was I went through every section of our current charter, the hard copy, and I checked off every time I found it in the revised version. And I did have everything checked off, but I could have missed something, or so I do need other sets of eyes to help me on that. But what we're looking at is we're looking at the idea of taking this charter. So again, the proposed idea is the first article would be a reordering of our existing charter to essentially this document, obviously less the things that we added that weren't in the original chart. We have a few things that we as a committee have recommended adding. Like, for example, Ms. Votran recommended adding a new committee, the precinct advisory committee. And so that's actually, that's in here, but it doesn't have a number next to it. It literally says blank dash blank dash blank, because it's new. And I actually tried to put in parentheses new committee to give some people understood why there's no number next to it. But the goal being that when we go to town meeting, we start with asking town meeting to reorder our existing charter. And then we can proceed by going forward with articles for each chapter. And each chapter may have 2 or 3 subsections. So for example, for each chapter, we would have it was recommended to us today by the town clerk's office, that Kelly recommended to us, well, why don't we do one basically just subsection that is just grammatical changes. So all the grammatical changes for chapter 1, and those would be identified. And
Grammatical.
grammatical,
Commas
typographical,
and periods.
and commas,
Town
periods.
spelled with a capital
such-
T and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and all of that, so things that, then the second would be at least the things that we feel are less controversial. Things that we think, okay, as a general rule, these are things that could be lumped together, and anybody's always free to move to separate something out.
So you have one motion to do the copy edit. And then you have the next motion to deal with least controversial,
Yeah, substantive,
Substantive.
substantive matters, but
but
those,
less controversial.
but those that we don't think, that we haven't heard from people saying, I'm gonna wanna discuss that separately.
Sure.
And then if there's things that we have heard or believe as a committee in advance that people are probably going to want to discuss separately, things that we may have debated ourselves a little bit more, we go, let's put that separate and apart, just because we know that's probably something that, you know. And so strategically, it's easier for a group to go, rather than have someone say, I want to separate this out. We've already done that. We've recognized this is something you want to discuss. And if it turns out you don't, well, then you can just go ahead and vote on it. But if you do, it's there and separated apart. And that way we can probably have town meeting move through some of these things a little bit more quickly if they're comfortable doing so, while at the same time making sure that they focus their energies on the things that they really want to focus their energies on.
Some articles, like the article for a chapter may only have, Article 10A and 10B. The next one may have 10A, 10B, 10C, and 10D. This depends on the complexity
Sure.
of the substantive changes. Because what that does is it saves the discussion and the voting to break it out, and it's actually in the bylaw. We looked it up. It's bylaw 173-9 talks about it, if a motion to split it up. It actually talks about that. And we just think it'll be easier to drill down on the things that are really important for the charter that we want to expend our energies on.
Okay, and that sort of brings up the one of the topics that I had is there were, well, I don't know, I should let Steve finish and then.
Well, no, please, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt
No.
your flow.
He said this 42 times,
Would you hold off until, Mr. Pies, did you have your hand up, sir?
It is.
Oh, you raised your physical hand instead of the Zoom hands. Oh, sorry,
Okay.
I didn't.
My question is, are we planning to present to the town meeting members at least 2 documents? One, the document that Steve is showing us with the changed ordering and all of the changes, and 2, our proposed charter, which, for example, 240602-2, updated. Is that what we're planning to do?
I don't believe so, Larry. I think that we're planning on presenting the finalized version of 6/14/24, the one that's in front of you today. Again, I think the other version was sort of, as I took it, was kind of an idealized version. But that would be us speaking for town meeting. That's not our role. Town meeting will decide what the idealized version is. It's their version that's idealized. So it'll be theirs. I merely took that document as if everything that we recommended was approved by town meeting. But I don't know if that will or won't be the case. So I think what the proposal would be to say, here is the proposed document as it is, with the various articles explaining what changes we make per chapter of a reordered charter.
Um,
And then have them go through each chapter and decide what does or does not meet their requirements.
I might, I might want to question whether we might, I mean, I find our understanding of your document marvelous, because we spent, what, a year and a half almost, dealing with it. I'm wondering about a town meeting member who hasn't, and it might be it might be a gift to the town meeting to say, quite honestly, this is before you have a chance to amend it, but if you do nothing, this is the document as it will turn out. To me, that will provide a whole lot more clarity.
I'm sorry, the document, if you do nothing? So
No,
you're,
the document that you've done, plus
Yes.
a document, if town meeting chooses to accept every single change that we've made, because we've done something to a degree organic. I mean, we said we have a philosophical direction, and that's why we're coming out with this document, as opposed to, I mean, I know we did this piece by piece, but it's also true that during the discussion, we said, well, this is the pattern that we're following. So I'm wondering, I mean, I think that clearly the document that you've created has to go to town meeting. I'm just wondering whether it would not be a service to town meeting to give them the second document to say, and this is what we came up with before hearing your opinions.
So Larry, may I ask, so what you're saying is give them a document that is reflective of if they approved everything. Everything that we propose, grammatical, substantive, reorganization, whatever you want to call it, and already renumbered, give them that document as a point of reference?
Yes.
Okay.
Point of reference is an excellent description.
I see absolutely no reason why we couldn't do something like that. I mean, again, it's not something that they would be voting on, but it would be something for informational purposes. So, yeah. of
Exactly.
course.
Mr.
Can
Hanlon,
I
or
ask
Mr.
a question?
Betty, I didn't see it, but you'll be right after Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hanlon?
Didn't we talk about that 2 weeks ago? And you were suggesting 2 documents. One just renumbered, or not renumbered, but reorganized.
The copy edit.
And then the second one with the substantive changes. Isn't that what we were talking about?
Yes, the answer is yes.
But that was for us, not for town meeting.
Right, here was the problem with that. I had suggested that we have the existing charter and this thing that we have proposed. And the way you could tell the differences was have this document that kind of pinned the two together. When we sat and talked to legal counsel last week, her feedback to us was, well, here's what happens if they decide to take the DPW department and want it back in the charter. So now we have to figure out where it goes. So then the numbering that we may have done just gets thrown out because it doesn't, it's got to be redone again. So the thought is to take what we have before you tonight is showing them what we're deleting, but if they choose to keep it in the document, this is where it would go.
Right.
And the
But-
numbering,
But I think that the suggestion that Mr. Pizer is making, and I think it's a very good one.
right,
Is to say, okay. You town meeting will do whatever it is you want to do. That's your role here. That's your right. That is what you're supposed to do. However, as a committee, this is the idealized version that we have reached. If you agree with us, you don't have to, but if you agree with us, this is what the charter will look like. So take a look at this, and if you're comfortable with this, this will at least give you an idea as to you agree with it. If there's things that you're not comfortable with, then you'll know to add those back in. It's sort of taking the two extremes. So version 614.24 is here's everything and you're going to be removing from that. Because you'll be removing strikeouts or you'll be accepting strikeouts, one way, but you'll be removing pieces from that. The version that Mr. Pizer is suggesting would be the converse. Here's everything. If there's something that you think needs to go back in there, you're adding it back in. You don't have to, but those are your options.
Yeah.
And I think again, from Mr. Pizer's suggestion, it's a very good one. People who look at things differently, some will want to look at it, I want to see everything and then work off of that. Others will say, I want to see the idealized version and see if there's anything that I want to add back in. So as an informational piece, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mr. Hutchinson?
I agree with what Steve has said, but also would add that, and this is editing Larry, and that's always dangerous. But,
Indeed.
but one of the things that he might be suggesting is that we've had 18 months of absorption time. And the town meeting folks will not have had that. And so one of the ways to provide insight for how we did it is to actually put a section in. Well, I don't know whether he would say, I'm suggesting that, putting a section in that goes through assumptions and principles that we used as a committee to make whatever changes be included up front. So explain why you did what you did, not just show them what you did. Give them a why.
Very good. First, I'm gonna, Betty, and then Mr. Lawler, then Ms. Beltran. Betty, go right ahead.
Thank you, Alan. So I have a couple of, I don't know if it's questions or more concerns. So we're going to, I'm trying to look at the mechanics of all this. So we're going to have a document that is all renumbered, has our changes, and that's going to be one vote. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but then no. So then how do we get all of the changes on the document that said, even if someone says, well, I don't want, if town meeting says, I don't want this part, I don't want that part. And then another opinion that I have is, as we move this forward, I think it's imperative that the charter commission moves forward with a charter committee, moves forward with a unanimous vote. So the town meeting knows that everyone has done their homework, everybody's in agreement, and this is the document that we believe is gonna move our town forward. But what I don't understand is, like, how many motions are we going to require to be put on the warrant for all of this?
Betty, this is Len. So.
Yep.
What we're proposing, and this is advice of counsel, to make it so that we don't end up having it be an all or nothing vote. Because she's concerned that if it's an all or nothing vote, we will end up with nothing. And the point is by having the first article be for the reorg, simply that. The second article would be for chapter 1. Let's say it's article 2, just for discussion purpose. Article 2A would be grammatical. And if there was no substantive changes in article 2, there would be no article 2B. Now we go to article 3, it's the next chapter. A is grammatical. And then if there's substantive changes, it would be article 3B. Now, if there's something in that article that we feel as a committee that we should break into two pieces so that we don't lose everything. So for example, I'm not gonna try to give examples, it doesn't matter. But it just, so each article would have sub-articles depending on what was going on in that chapter. And that's what we would give them. I think that Larry's idea of giving them something that says, here's all the detail. This is, you know, it's like, here's the drawing for the airplane. Here's all the engineering drawings for the airplane. I'm gonna put my engineer. And here's a picture of it when it's done, ready to fly. So that charter that's done, ready to fly, if you vote on everything, this is what it's gonna look like. And again, as I said, it's a reference document and people could use it. So that's what we're going, that's how that process is going to work. We feel like there's probably, how many chapters, Steve? I forget.
9
chapters.
9.
So we're talking about potentially 11 articles, one for reorg, one for each chapter, and something we haven't discussed yet. The last one would be to authorize the town clerk to renumber it. And
Wouldn't that have to be in the beginning?
well, I don't think it matters. I mean, according to what our discussions with Kate and Kelly, I don't think it matters, so we thought we'd put it at the end. Because the renumbering is gonna be a function of what is approved, what's left over. Because there's some stuff in this document now, if this is what we give to town meeting, and there's some section that we've redlined and they go vote, we don't want to redline that, it goes back in, and this is where we wanted to put it. And now that's when the numbering would happen, because any numbering beforehand would be a waste of time.
So the first motion isn't going to be to renumber, it's just going to be to reorganize?
Uh-huh.
And then the other comment that I had is that I believe that we as a committee, and that was even with Steve's legal ease involved in it, that we were going to redline all the changes in, you know, a DPW director, a finance, all the job descriptions. Because
And that's in this document, that you don't have the printed version, but the document that I sent you guys the other day, that is in here.
but my concern is that, let's just say, for example, someone says, well, we want those departments, you know, to stay in there. So what are we going to do? And I'm sure this it's a question for Steve as well, is that what happens when it's almost somewhat discriminatory that we are highlighting some departments and not all departments?
No, we're highlighting the ones we voted to eliminate. We should say the departments, we're highlighting the
The
sections of.
positions,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
the positions. But what happens if town meeting says, we don't want to remove those?
We unredline it. It becomes part of that chapter or section wherever we have put it to support our reorganization effort. And then it just gets renumbered. And that's why we are going to break it up, an article per chapter, a sub-article for grammatical for each chapter, and then depending on the complexity of the changes to that chapter, sub-articles for maybe each section, or we may have one sub-article for all the changes in that chapter. It really depends on the complexity of it. But the reason for doing it that way is we don't have to, because if we don't, I really believe this now. I've changed my thinking about it. If we don't do that, then we have to then go back. We don't have any, we're not showing them what the reorg would look like, independent of the adds and deletions and modifications. This is what the reorg would look like. If they didn't approve any of the deletions, and all we did was pick things up and move them around, and yeah, we fixed the word town and things like that, that's the document. We basically done nothing but take the existing charter and reorganize it and renumber it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense to me, but so we have 9 articles that are gonna change. Wouldn't it just simplify things if we did one at a time? We can still show what Larry says, this is what it's gonna look like if everything is approved, but wouldn't it be simpler for town meeting to comprehend that this is the change for this? And this is, you know what I mean? Whether it's 9 or 11 or however many motions we're gonna need, is that, don't you think that simplifies this process, or am I like?
No, Betty,
Not
you're
on-
absolutely right. I think that's what we're talking about. So what we're trying to do is we're saying, okay. Assuming that town meeting votes to reorder the charter, and I don't see any reason why they would. In fact, I would imagine that most people would be grateful that we went through that exercise and said, we've now grouped things, all things together that belong together. We've just taken your charter and we've made it easier to work with. I'm not anticipating a problem with town meeting in doing that. Once we have done that, we are going to go chapter by chapter through this. Those are going to be our articles. So yes, they're looking at that chapter and comparing it to they'll be looking at the morass that is the red line with the changes, the additions, the capitalizations, the punctuations and all that. But with Larry's suggestion, they'll also have a document which says, and if you agree with all of this, this is what this nice document will look like afterwards. So they will be able to see what it looks like in a finalized version with all of the changes, and then they can say, okay, I'm good with that, or no, I still see a couple of things that I want to keep in there, or they've added something that I don't like, I want to take that out, I don't want that to go back in. And regardless as to what they do, we'll have it in the right place, and when it's finished, it'll still work and function.
Okay.
So I think you have the right idea, and we are trying to do it that way.
Okay,
You got your answers, Betty, for now?
for now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawler, then Ms. Beltran? You withdraw? Ms. Beltran, go right ahead.
I agree with the ideas that we've just been talking about having 2 different documents. And I keep thinking about town meeting members that are saying that they have the right to make changes. So I think I am coming from the point of view, and I guess probably everybody, there will be changes. And so accommodating him with 2 different documents, I think is great. And one thing that I haven't heard us discuss is the order that is on version that we just got, 6/14/24.
Right.
Which I'm not happy with, and I know there's been a lot of work to it. I think it's great that we've come this far. I think we have a ways to go with our document as far as all of our changes and what we want and where we want everything. So if
What's an
we can,
example of
I
something
was
that?
wondering when in our agenda we'll be able to talk about the document, not the amendments and all of that part.
This is not reflective of the order.
Well, no, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So,
It is, I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
so
I think
are we at that part of
I
our
think the
agenda?
time is now, so if you have a suggestion or, go right ahead.
Well, I wish I had a suggestion
Okay.
and maybe,
Or a concern,
and
maybe you can
so
just
I will.
eliminate your concern, yeah.
What you do, why don't you?
Right,
you can
so my
express-
concerns-
You can express what your issue
Yeah.
is, and then the subgroup that worked on it, we can explain why we put it where we
Yeah,
put it.
well, and what other
And if there's other ideas,
members feel
then we
too.
can
Yeah.
consider moving
Right.
it somewhere else.
right,
Can
Perfect.
can I ask a question before you start? Just a question?
sure.
So the document we gave you last time, that basically had no red line, no anything that, were you happy with?
She was very clear, Martha was very, sorry, I don't mean to
I
say
hadn't
it, Martha was
really
very
read
clear,
it.
but she said I hadn't read it.
Okay.
I had a little bit, but.
Okay,
not-
that's fine. I'm just trying to clarify for
And,
myself.
and this, having this document is really great because it's, draft 2, it's that much better.
That's fine.
So, so my concern is that, I know we talked about townwide elected boards and, statutorily required boards and charter generated, created boards. And though that is very helpful. What I see that we've lost is the idea of executive branch of government and legislative branch of government. And I see that as really important as a part of a charter. So we do still have a legislative branch, representative town meeting, but we've lost executive branch. And I just haven't had time in my day to think about, geez, how can we reorganize?
Well, you don't have to reorganize, you can lift chapter 2, and just call it the executive branch, townwide elected boards and officers. That is the executive branch, that's. The only,
With moderator also included there.
yeah,
But in my thinking, moderator would be in the legislative branch.
well,
Because he
moderator
is
is not in the legislative branch, that's, we made the moderator a townwide elected officer with
He's elected.
powers.
Well, that's what he is. He's always been there, right?
Correct, and that's.
Whereas the charter before was promoted by or proposed by the commissioners. Had him be elected by the town meeting because that is the body of which he.
But we can't make
is
these changes.
No, I know we can't.
Yeah.
But I guess, so there's that issue that I have. And then, I'm wondering about how the rest of it is organized in terms of elections being chapter 4, which I would tend to keep town administrator with executive and then,
We don't have a town administrator.
well, we have a town manager.
We have an
Sorry.
entire, so we created an entire chapter for town
Right,
administration, so
exactly.
you could find the people who are.
And I understand that, that way of thinking. I am just looking at what we have lost and wondering if we can reorganize differently so that we have both.
But we really haven't lost anything, Martha. We really haven't
What?
lost anything. We've lost it in title.
So you feel that way.
Well, no, I understand.
I do feel.
I'm just trying to, yeah, that's right. I don't express, my opinion is not anybody else's. I'm just trying to help. We haven't lost. We've lost it in title, but not in substance.
And so I guess I say titles are very
Well,
important.
but that's because it wasn't there before, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be there now. Some, the relationship between, executive, legislative and, planning needs to get explained. And then the executive needs to get explained as well.
And so do you see some way of being able to do that? In
Well, I
this
mean,
organization or
I can
in
certainly,
another organization?
it's a discussion, I think.
I can certainly tell you that if you wanted to, I can certainly say, for example, and again, a lot of this is in, as you say, it's titles and headings.
Right.
Titles and headings are something that we can do. So for example, we have townwide elected boards and officers. You have some general provisions. We could then create a section. No, actually, not even a section, just a heading in there. And again, headings go into the table of contents. We could create a heading that says executive bodies, the executive. We just call it the executive, however you want to do it. And under that, you can put the select board and the planning board, which have always been.
And the town manager.
No, I'm gonna hold my ground on that one. The town manager is not an executive.
Okay.
Now,
I
because,
mean, it was in the title,
but it's,
so
but it,
that's
but that's,
fine.
the town manager is not an executive. The town
Well, but you
administrator,
know what I'm talking about,
town manager is administrator, it belongs under the.
and it's a
administrator.
separate item, and you want it separated.
And I think that needs.
And I
to
think
be that
that's,
way.
I think I agree with that.
And when you look at our form of government, which is in the
Yes.
scope of town, wherever, form of government.
Yeah,
legislative, town meeting, select board, executive, and town manager.
Yeah.
Three different, right there.
Exactly, and so we have three, exactly, we have townwide elected officers, we have legislative branch, and we have the town administration. Three separate chapters with three separate categories.
Yes, so why
Again,
is townwide or select board comes before legislative in terms of our form of government? In other words, and the way our charter was or is right now, our current charter.
well, I think in part because we have always stated, because you follow the same mantra that we do in the federal government, which was whenever discussions are made, it always goes elective, legislative, judicial. So that's always the way that going from constitutionally, that's kind of the way people think about it.
So why was our charter, is our charter
Our charter still,
legislative, executive?
I think the federal charter is actually the legislature is first, the executive is second, judiciary is third.
So
Where do you see it legislative? I see representative.
well, but
I
well,
don't see
and
executive.
representative
In the
town
form of
meeting.
government, I don't see executive.
the reason, Martha, we did it that way is we went, again, the reason that I did it the way is because I follow the way federal statutes written, and so it's my brain works, and Joe and I talked about, Joe did, from an engineering standpoint, we work at the
Okay,
overarching.
I can see that is
And
where
narrow.
it came from.
So for example, everybody elects the select board, everybody's townwide, that's everybody. Those are the things that concern everybody. Representative town meeting, those are elected by groups of people. It's a narrower focus. And then you move to people who are appointed. That's a narrower focus. And there are people who have to be appointed, and then people who we decided should be appointed, yet a narrower focus. So the focus has always worked out narrow, from the broad to the narrow. That's
Yeah.
that's how my brain works, and that's just why I put it that way.
So is that the way everybody thinks about the
No,
way we should
Well,
change it?
no.
So that's the other
concept-
thing, is it's a change. And I personally am trying to make as few changes as possible. And so our charter right now is legislative, selective, town manager.
And you could infer from that order of importance with respect to what form of government you have. Not stated, but the first thing you talk about is the legislature. But Steve's idea is to have
Two different ideas.
understand a comprehensible concept behind it. And so he's going from a greater to a lesser focus. That's, I think,
And I can see that,
And the reason
So,
for that is to
trying to decide
organize this
whether I
thing in
want
such a
to
way that people.
change two things. One is that the form of government, I've always seen it, correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
wrong.
right.
Town meeting, select board, town manager, if you have that.
And I haven't looked at what that ordering might be for other towns, but we could check.
But the order of the information in the charter does not set any kind of precedent, in my opinion. It's organizational. That's all it is. It's trying to group things that are in common, like townwide elected boards and officers. In this case, the boards are the select board, the planning board. The officer in this case is, if you consider him that, but the moderator. And then it's trying to group it. In my opinion, if you infer that that makes those things more important because they come first, it's not what it's doing. It's not
No,
doing that.
I'm not
Okay.
necessarily saying that.
Right.
but-
And I understand that we have certain terminology that we used in the past. And in my opinion, that terminology in some cases had different meanings depending on where it was in the charter. And took on different precedents depending on where it was in the charter. And what we've tried to do is standardize on that terminology. And that's all that's going on here. So will this be hard for some people to comprehend? Sure. We've struggled with this here as this body at times. This is a major overhaul of this charter, like it's never been done since the day it was written. There is gonna be that. Kinds of things that we need as a committee to go out and help people understand and answer their questions at every opportunity we can, so that then they're supportive of that. Be honest with you, if you're asking us to start moving things around and renumbering it, I mean, changing labels and doing all that. I'm happy with what we've accomplished here and the work we've done. And I think for me, just reading it, it's in a very logical order. And I apply no precedent, the fact that something is chapter 2 versus chapter 3 or chapter 6. It just happens to be where it fell. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Lawler, go right ahead, just let Mr. Lawler get a comment in, go right ahead, sir.
I'm confused. So why don't you tell us exactly what changes you would like to make and why, and make it so that I can understand it.
And I haven't gotten there myself yet, as I
Okay,
mentioned,
so
that
that's important.
I think this discussion is what I wanted to happen. Is this the way are we, you know, willing to compensate for the losses that I see? I mean, I still would like to,
Could you
even,
be more specific of what law?
all right, is to me, losing the strong concept of executive branch and legislative branch.
Can you be?
So going, so looking at it that way, so titling chapter 2 as executive branch. And not be concerned with the townwide boards and officers part of it, so that it would be select board, planning board. And that's it.
So change, so you're saying
So
on
that-
chapter 2, Mark,
If that
you
is what
wanna
we would have to
change,
do.
you wanna change.
Well, that's what
it says on chapter
I'm
2.
thinking out loud here.
Well, we can certainly,
And
Mr.
and
Bolton?
then,
Okay, I'm sorry, keep going, if you have a thought, yeah, go right ahead.
okay, and then the next chapter would be the legislative branch, which is representative town meeting, as is here. And town moderator,
So you
and
take
the
a big.
third,
Martha,
fourth
you take
chapter
big bites, you
would
take
be
big bites,
town
smaller
manager.
bites, right? So on the chapter 2. Says townwide elected town board and officers, right? You wanna specifically change that to what now?
executive,
You wanna change that,
executive branch.
you wanna say executive branch right there.
Yeah, and so that would be chapter 2, and chapter 3 is legislative branch.
Oh, and then go down to chapter 3. You wanna keep that the legislative branch, correct?
Right,
Okay, so with chapter 2, go back, cause that's already there. So chapter 2, you just wanna inject the word executive branch. Is that what you're suggesting?
exchange townwide elected boards and officers. Because I wouldn't include school committee under executive branch. And I wouldn't include the moderator under executive branch.
Okay, so within chapter 2 and moving that around and renaming that to executive branch, within that. You don't wanna take out 2 more things, correct?
let me make a
School
suggestion.
committee, yeah. and
Let me make a
This
suggestion.
is not fair. I mean, making her do changes on the fly is,
Well,
is.
We're talking, Joe, it's not.
Hey, Joe, we're trying to just get a couple of headings and let's get some common ground on that, and then we can expand on that.
Because then I can go back and make changes and make some
'Cause
suggestions.
I think executive can go in there relatively easy,
I think
and if that solves some of the confusion,
What I would-
we're working in the right direction.
What I would suggest is if that's the case, we can add it to, I would say, fine, we make chapter 2 the executive. And we put in the select board and the planning board. I would make a chapter 3 then, other elected town-wide bodies. And then chapter 4 would be the legislative branch. Again, there's a reason
Okay.
that one
So
of
you would include school committee and
In other.
moderator
in other,
in that one.
correct.
And the other two, that,
Yeah,
And,
oh, get some hands up.
yeah, if I could, the school committee is I'm sorry, the school committee is actually correlative. It does for the school department of the town what the select board does for the municipal side of the town. And I mean, I think that's what elective boards do. And the idea, we worked on this quite a while, and I was extremely pleased that we made an understanding that these are the elected bodies that represent the executive of the town. Before I lose my position, I have some trouble defining the difference between executive and administrative. I mean, administrative actually usually is part of the executive. The town manager reports to the select board. The superintendent reports to the school committee. So I understand the idea of civics, but adding the word executive, I would be against, but subtracting school committee and moderator and the rest of the elect boards would be extremely bothersome to me. Thank you.
if I may, just before we get to.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bolton, counter that, yeah, or add to that,
I'm gonna,
after that, yeah.
I'm gonna ask Martha, because I understand your point. I really do. And this was something that we, in the committee, talked about. As a subcommittee talked about. One of the things that I'm gonna ask you to do is I'm gonna ask you to take off your longstanding Plymouth resident, I understand the system of government hat. And I'm gonna ask you to put on your League of Voters hat. And I'm going to tell you, as you start
I'm
looking
trying to
at.
wear them together.
I know, well, but they are separate here. Because one of the things that a lot of us heard as we went around talking about this is that the residents don't know. And you're trying to create a document, I can tell you, every time I worked on this, I had Joe's voice in my ear. I listened to Mr. Hutchinson's statement. How is the average person going to figure this out if they're going through this document? If you put the town administrator, the town manager, underneath the select board, they're going to assume that the town manager has an elected position or appointment or authorities similar to an elected body. They are separate. And that's why I separate. I just tried to listen to what the residents that I spoke to and the people that others talked to, committee members who told me that this is what they've heard, is that the people don't understand. If you understand our form of government, this change doesn't confuse anybody. They know exactly what they're looking for and who they're looking for. But if you don't understand our form of government and you're trying to explain it to somebody, trying to put that connection between, well, here's how the town manager goes under the select board, and then you've got these departments under the town manager, but they're approved by this, but then we have a town meeting form of government is so integrated in that essentially for every action, everybody has some form of input. And so with that, trying to create that seamless doesn't work. And that's what I think our existing charter tried to do in a lot of ways. And that's how you ended up with, that's the very reason you end up with references to each body in 3 or 4 different places. Because they have the town, the moderator. Well, the moderator's a townwide elected official. Should have been in that listing. They're not, but they should have been. but then the town moderator has responsibilities for town meeting, okay, but then the town moderator has responsibilities associated with the FinCom, okay? And then the moderator has responsibilities associated with the appointments for the charter committee. So the town moderator appears in 4 different places. If I was new to the town, and I said, I don't understand this town moderator, I came from a city with a mayor, I don't understand this. What does the town moderator do? If I looked at the charter the way it is now, there is no way on God's green earth that I'm going to figure out, unless you do what I've done, which is read this charter 100+ times. And I do not recommend that for anybody.
And
So-
so here's my question to you, Steve. I'm not I agree with having all the jobs that the town moderator does in his chapter or her chapter.
I
But,
use the plural there, but that's.
Right,
yeah.
their chapter, but, why wouldn't the town moderator chapter, section, whatever, be part of the legislative branch, wherever that is?
Because the town
And-
moderator is elected townwide and has
But that's-
responsibilities outside of if the town moderator was simply a legislator, then that would be perfectly fine. If, again, as you like to go back to the charter commission, the charter commission essentially said that the moderator is appointed by or elected by the legislature, and that's their role. That would be fine, but that isn't the role that we as Plymouth have assigned to the town moderator. The town moderator is an independent position which straddles various different aspects of the town.
And I guess I see his prime role as being the legislative branch, so I would put him there. I mean, these are just different.
Yeah, I mean, that's his
ways of
job.
looking at it. And I
Well,
can
actually,
see now where a school committee could very well be in legislative branch. But I guess I don't see it as important to identify, I'm talking myself out of it even more here, townwide elected boards as a defining part of our charter. I see executive and legislative as more important.
All right, let me bring in Betty. Betty, do you have any input?
I do. I actually don't have any issue with the way the group put everything together. I mean, one of the things that Steve said is that this is the way the federal judicial system does business. I think by adding or putting the subsequent language in each of those forms, executive board, legislative board, other elected officials, or however, I can't really see it that well because I'm on my phone, but that is really much clearer than what we have now. And I think we're kind of getting into the weeds of this kind of thing, because the charter should be easier to understand. And I believe that these language changes that not only the subcommittee did, but the group did together as a whole, make it a simpler document to understand our form of government.
That's very good. Thank you. Mr. Lalo?
Awesome. I respect you tremendously. Help me understand why you want the moderator in the legislative branch.
Because he's the moderator at town meeting.
Because he's the moderator of town meeting.
That's,
And why should that be in the legend?
he's their charge.
He's the reason for its existence.
Is that the only reason?
He's not a legislator though,
Yeah, that is,
but he's not a legislator.
Well, but the reason that he's for his existence is the legislature.
that is
But he has so many
interesting.
different
Actually, he's not a
roles.
legislator
No,
himself.
And as a matter of fact, and as a matter of fact, as a matter of fact,
All right, let's all have a conversation one at a time. This
I'm
is
sorry.
pretty important.
let me just.
All right, Anthony, go ahead, answer your question.
I'm gonna
Go
just
ahead.
answer Ms. Vogel's.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. He's not a legislator, and in fact, if you follow the federal system, if you look as to who presides over Congress in the event of the time, it is the Vice President of the United States, a member of the executive branch. So again, if you're trying to compare our form of government to the executive, to the federal, which is how people but that's how people compare. If you say executive, that's how people think. And that's why I did a lot of this, again, because residents who don't understand, they immediately try and compare our form, they try and relate our form of government to one with which they are familiar. And if you come from a city form of government, but they all know our federal government. And so I tried to relate it in that same way.
So maybe I should make a motion and put this to bed one way or another. Have we talked?
Well, I have a follow.
Or,
All right, before you take a motion, you have a follow-up on the question you asked, go right ahead.
I'd like to turn to Larry. Larry, what is your opinion on that moderator being part of the legislative side or the executive side?
It's a, you know, he's both. But I think that Steve's comment about the vice president, there was an effort, if you remember, about 3.5 years ago to suggest that the vice president could do certain things because he was a legislator, and that failed. So I would, you know, one of the things about that the committee dealt with as we were going through the charter is there are multiple ways of putting things together. I mean, the town clerk appears here, there, and everywhere, but do you want to have a section just on the town clerk? Because that would disrupt a whole lot of other sections of the charter. Therefore, while you could have a long discussion about whether the moderator is mostly legislative or mostly a townwide elected person, I'm supportive of the organization that the subcommittee presented. Whether or not he is partially, mostly, sort of, whatever, legislative. So to it that, I hope that answers your question, Tim.
Thank you, Larry.
I'll send Mr. Lemon. Mr. Lemon, you had it, comment?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay,
I have seen Mr. DiNardo's hand
I
up.
was just gonna bring that up. Is there any objection with the committee to bring in Mr. Donato? For a brief comment, Mr. Donato, go right ahead, sir.
Al Gennaro, precinct 17. I just jumped in here 15 minutes ago, so I'm trying to get caught up. But two issues, you know, I've been a town meeting member for 35 years, another community. If we were some obscure town in Western Massachusetts and we were having this discussion, I'd be pointing to Plymouth and saying in the charter, town meeting should be first, because that was the basis of this entire government. And at that time, if you study it, the town meeting was just a gathering of folks. And the first appointment was a constable, then a town clerk, then a select board. When Plymouth and other towns got so big, they couldn't manage it. They had select men. Select, that's where that name comes from. And you know, I envision folks that have lived in a communist country for 60 years coming here and trying to read this Plymouth charter. What is it? And there it is, town meeting, closest to the people. The authority comes directly from the people. The entire government, matter of fact, the entire government of the United States rests on this notion of self-government. So forget that we're even Plymouth. Just as any town meeting body, even if it's symbolic, I would want town. You cannot spend a nickel in this town without and a lot of people may dislike that. You cannot spend a nickel in Plymouth without the approval of town meeting. And one other issue with the moderator, most moderators are elected from the body. He or she breaks a tie. The flow comes from town meeting. He or she appoints the finance committee. That finance committee is an arm of town meeting. I believe the moderator in Plymouth is just a leftover townwide election. You had town clerk was elected townwide years ago. This was sort of a leftover that was never updated to have the body. If I want a finance committee to change and focus just on finance, well, I'd sit down with the moderator. So, and I brought that up during the Charter Commission when I first moved here. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right,
I do have- I do-
Mr. Levin, go right
I do
ahead.
have one comment.
Go ahead.
So if you think of things in an organizational way, and here's an analogy I use, you have a file drawer. And you can organize your file drawer in a couple ways. You can organize it by function, or you can organize it by company. You know, all these companies that you do business with. Or you could have a folder that says you do insurance and utilities and all that, and you do that. And that's what this is. This is organizing it functionally. It's, again, where it falls in the charter is not setting any precedent, it's information. This is, if you had to rely on this to explain to you what a town meeting form of government is, I believe you're not gonna get this. There's better sources to explain. All this is telling us is the different people that hold different positions in this town. One, this is how they get into those positions elected. This is how they get into these positions appointed, as we've said, that are mandated by a higher authority, in this case, the state. Things that are appointed that aren't a higher, that the town has a choice to do that. And so that's all this is doing. I also would be careful about using words executive, independent of the federal government or anything else, unless we clearly define what that means. I will guarantee you, if you walk down Water Street and ask somebody in the context of this document what the executive was, you could get probably as many answers as you would get people you would talk to. So using just a single word to describe something, while we all may know what it is, as Steve said, there's lots of people that wouldn't understand it, and I think it would be, it would be, to me, add confusion. This is clearly saying, these are the people that the people elect, simply that, and this is how, what their jobs are. This is what the people who basically make the decisions about how this town, I shouldn't say run, but basically how the money is spent that the citizens have given to the town to make sure it's being spent. This is the administration of the town. In our case, it's a town management, all these departments. Remember, we took out the part that says the DPW should plow snow. Right? We took that out. We're proposing taking out, you know, things like that. We took out that because reality of it is, whether it's in the charter or not, isn't going to decide whether the snow gets plowed, right? So I understand where you're coming from, Martha. I completely understand it. But I think using single words to describe what this is, and what we did there is, it's got nothing to do with the fact that the moderator's primary job is to run town meeting. We're saying, how does he get that job? How does the select board get that job? How does the planning board get that job? And once they get it, what are some of their responsibilities? That's all it is. So, you know, we could take this as a deck of cards and throw it up in the air and let it fall and see where it comes, but I would not read anything into that. Something is chapter 2, as I said earlier, chapter 4. It's just information, that's all it is, and it's the way it fell out. And that's all.
And to that point, let's see where we are. Do you have a motion at this time, or would you like to take some time to collect your thoughts, put together anything and everything that you would like to see addressed?
Know what people think right now.
Yeah.
About, having, as I mentioned before, chapter 2 be the legislative branch, and chapter 3 be the executive branch, and the legislative branch include the moderator, and the executive branch includes select board, planning board, school committee.
So your motion is to change the title of chapter 2 as it reads tonight.
If you can keep townwide, well, that won't work.
Change the title of 2.
Right.
Keep 3, but you want to put the moderator from 2 into 3. And
move 3 ahead of 2.
basically.
Yes, the legislative would be chapter 2 and would include moderator.
Moderator and.
Oh, so that moderator is already in chapter 2. So.
Right. But he's,
I'll leave it there, obviously.
Okay,
but he's under, he would then be under the heading of executive, which is counter to your.
Yeah.
Well, no, moderator, if chapter 2 is legislative branch,
Oh, okay.
then
So
moderator.
you wanna
is
change
still
2 for
there.
3,
Right,
okay?
and then,
you wanna change 2 for 3 and 3 for 2,
yeah,
and you wanna call 2 for 3 the executive branch?
Well, what's two?
2 would be a
Legislative.
legislative branch,
And three
and
is.
in that you'd have
is
obviously
executive.
town meeting members and you'd have the moderator. Is
Right,
that correct?
right.
The new chapter 3 would only address select board, planning board, and school committee. Is that what you said in your motion?
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Okay.
and I'm assuming housing and, we never talked about them, but they're gonna be lumped. in.
Redevelopment. And housing redevelopment, where would they go?
Well, I haven't gotten that far.
Well, they would go into the elected,
But,
boards and offices, right?
Well, there is no.
If-
boards and offices.
well, we-
Take that out.
I'm not saying we'd eliminate that totally, but,
But that's okay,
So-
we could include that as an other, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's the motion.
Now, I don't know if you've had an opportunity, not to pressure you, but are there any things further along in the table of contents that you'd like to address? Or is this really sort of the issue?
well, no, I think elections should be further down, not chapter 4.
Okay, but hang on, because I need to get this documented. Sorry, I'm not trying to, we're not changing the document right now. I'm
We're not
just-
changing it this time, but these are the concerns.
Right.
And then my thought would be,
This is one.
This is one motion.
Right, hang on.
yes,
Let
Yeah,
me just
that's
repeat back.
fine.
So we're gonna change chapter 2 to chapter 3, and it's gonna be called the it's gonna be
Executive branch.
executive
No.
branch.
Chapter 2 would be the legislative branch.
legislature's gonna leave.
Right, it's gonna be called the executive branch. Okay, just give me a second,
Chapter 3 would be the executive branch.
and this would be the legislative. Cause this is what got us, and then you want to have. And you want to have the moderator to become part of chapter 2.
Which is what?
Yeah, and that's where it is right now.
Well, no, it's not, you'd be moving it to the legislative and then move legislative.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, yeah, just on this,
and the,
compared to our document here. Yeah.
excuse me just a second, I just want to make sure I get this right, because when we get in a hurry. So then. That's the place where it says select board, planning board, school committee, those are gonna stay. We know what we're gonna do to the town moderator. And what are we gonna do with housing authority and redevelopment authority?
Well, I don't see them on here.
Well, if you go look on page,
As
14,
As
24.
I told you, you cannot go by
They're
just,
in 2-1.
right, if you go on page 5,
you can't just go by the table of contents. The table of contents does not include everything because because it was electronically created. I can't tag it because of the way the system worked.
So Steve, what did you do with the town-wide elected boards and offices? I mean, it's in here now in the table of contents, so,
it's on page 5.
well, but. In the table of contents, where would it go?
Well,
Under
that's what-
elected board officials.
Wait a minute, that's what we're asking, it's not, you guys are proposing to change. You're saying that just hang on, you're saying that we take the existing chapter 2 and we call it legislative, we take the existing chapter, sorry, I got it backwards, the existing chapter 2, make it chapter 3, call it executive. The existing chapter 3, make it chapter 2, it's legislative. Move the moderator into this new chapter 2. And then we would create another chapter for town-wide elected boards and officers to just cover the redevelopment and housing authority.
Or other town, right?
Well,
I'm sorry, I can't, you know.
No, I understand, Martha.
all
No,
that.
you don't have to apologize. No,
let's keep this motion, because it's starting to grow, let's keep it, let's address the flipping 2 for 3. And
Right.
change, and add in the word executive. And putting the moderator in the legislative, we don't wanna get too overblown, let's see where we are as a committee with that. And then we can build on that. Or reinvent what's already here, or or maybe, keep it as it is, we'll see.
Okay.
Is that acceptable, Martha? Does that,
Yeah.
wanna keep that motion? Let's see where we'll build off of it.
So let me read with the motion, if I understand it, because so we get a document. Motion to change chapter 2 to 3, and we will label it executive. Motion to change chapter 3 to 2, and it will become legislative. And the moderator will become part of the new chapter 2. And
I also suggested keeping planning board and school committee under what would be chapter 3, the
Executive.
executive.
okay. I'm just describing.
Selectmen, planning board and school committee. And at this time, we're not gonna worry about housing authority and redevelopment.
I
Okay,
second that.
Mr. Hutchinson seconds it. Any discussion at this time on the, motion as it's just been written?
Let me take the roll.
Mr. Hammond?
When you were making the proposal about the legislative branch and the executive branch initially, I had to go over and get the current charter and look at it. And that's the way it's laid out. 'Cause I'm talking about the existing town charter. So our federal constitution, and I believe our Massachusetts state constitution is the same, is similar. The legislature is first, executive is second, Article 1, legislature, Article 2, executive, Article 3, judiciary. We don't have judiciary, so we're not worried about this. We got a legislature and we got executive. So after a year and a half of work, this is what we came up with. And we all agreed at the time. You know, now we're rethinking for it. So I understand where you're coming from. You're going back to Article 1 is the legislature, Article 2 is the executive. That's the way. And to Len's point earlier, you walk down Water Street and you ask somebody if they understand how the town government works. Most people studied the federal government when they were in high school or in grade school. And it was always Article 1, legislature, Article 2, executive. That's so they're gonna say, you know, if we set it up the same way, they're gonna go, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know, legislature, executive. So I understand what you're talking about. And I think I understand why you're talking about it. So I'm a little bit torn between what we proposed and now what your new proposal. I do agree, I guess, that the moderator is a function, this is my opinion. The moderator is a function of the legislative branch. He may have other duties, but he's not like the vice president, who's clearly the executive branch, sitting in the legislature as that tie-breaking vote. He has the tie-breaking vote, but he's not the vice president. The moderator is not the vice president in the executive branch. So, as far as I can tell, he has little or no role in the executive branch of town government. So what it comes down to, I guess, is that what you're suggesting or proposing, I don't think really changes what we're doing or what was proposed in this 6.14.4, with the exception of the moderator, which. So the moderator in, this is a question, I guess, in chapter 2, townwide elected bodies, appears in 2 places. If I got it right, let me look here. Yeah, and the general provisions, position. which is the very first thing, general provisions, is included in that list of town-wide elected officials. And then, go on a little farther, and there's a whole section on the moderator. Section 5 is the moderator. So I assume this is a question, your proposal is to remove section 5, the moderator, which is on page 9. And put that in the
And
legislature. But you would leave him under a town-wide elected official.
No,
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily have that. As I've been saying along, I don't have everything all figured out for the whole table of contents. And so what is now in version 61424, townwide elected boards and officers, general provision that includes select board, planning board, school committee. It also includes moderator, housing authority, and redevelopment. I mean, I don't know how to handle those. They're handled in here.
I'm
So
not
maybe,
asking about the housing authority and redevelopment. You're gonna take a town moderator. D we're gonna take that out of that townwide elected list.
well, that list probably wouldn't be in chapter 2. It's not appropriate necessarily for chapter 2 because it's about townwide elected officials.
Okay.
It would have to be someplace else. Maybe in the guide, for that matter. That's another place that an explanation of townwide elected officials would be. I haven't thought it out, but
I mean,
I'm just talking
hang on a
about
second, hang on a second.
the framework. And one
This whole
more
train
thing,
finished and then
I just have one more thing to say, and that is, I don't ever remember discussing that this this table of contents, as we see here in the first version, and now in this version 61424, I don't ever remember discussing it and saying, this is what we want. We absolutely want it just like this.
It's basically what we had 2 weeks ago.
I know, and as you recall, I said I hadn't seen.
No, I
that
understand,
document before.
Martha, I'm just telling
I
you.
was
it was-
just getting up to speed on
I
seeing.
understand,
And really understanding.
The work document.
that's why we're
And,
talking
and
about,
more importantly, our committee is now talking about it, and I'm very happy for that.
right, that's fine, I'm just telling you when this was not created in the last few days, this table of contents is pretty much, except for maybe some page numbers. The structure of it was done when we gave you that
2 weeks.
black and white reorg document.
Right.
So, Mr. Lawler, you've been waiting, go right ahead, sir.
Mike, nice job on that. I think, Martha, what Mike is bringing up is that to reorder and reorganize, there are gaps that are being created that aren't that it's not complete. So because it's not complete now, and then you haven't kind of put things all together, right? It's leaving voids in the methodology of how it was strung originally together, and I truly understand what you're saying, but I'm about to jump off a cliff because I don't have the whole story put together.
And I can
perfectly
work on that with
at
other
this.
people for the next 2 weeks. I mean, you know,
Do
That's-
you wanna just kind of like put the brakes on right now and really think about?
There's a
it?
motion and a second.
Motion.
There's a motion, it's been seconded, unless it's,
All right, and then.
Vote, right, you can vote on it.
Let's vote.
yeah, is there any other discussion?
I can withdraw my second to talk about Tim's comment if you want.
That's right, you can withdraw and
And then Tim can.
and then readdress Mr. Lawler's suggestion, that's
Yeah, I
exactly
can,
right.
I'll withdraw my second for Tim's.
We'll find out first, if Mr. Lawler, Ms. Voltran, I'm sorry, is gonna withdraw her main motion. Or,
Oh, no, well,
No,
no,
not, cause I'm just saying, I'm really interested in what Martha wants to do, but she's gotta put it together so we can at least have consistency. I mean,
oh, I see.
I'm respecting you in the fact that,
I don't mind doing it. I mean.
Can I-
I think Mr. Lawler makes a good point. I actually wanted to go at it a little at a time tonight, but it might make better sense with some time if you put all of your thoughts together and see how it's all gonna coordinate and have some suggestions at a later meeting. If that's the thought, we can withdraw the motions and go that route.
because I think that's really very important. That we're all saying the same thing and agree upon this, right? Cause this is a year and a half, right? So if you have, Martha, if you're at the point that you wanna reorder some stuff and why you wanna do it, I'm very interested in that.
I don't mind doing it. So I will withdraw my motion if we can all agree that we can put it on the
Yeah, we all-
agenda in
We
2
all
weeks
agree on this.
to,
Well, it'll be the very first thing, that we take up next meeting. I would hope everyone, reads this, if they have any suggestions, that next meeting we hammer them out, discuss them, and come up with a document that, we all, can go forward with.
Well,
It's gonna be critical in the precinct caucuses that we have a united,
Okay.
front on this thing, and, let's, you know, we've been here a year and a half, another meeting, another 2 weeks, whatever we decide to have the next meeting. It's very important that we all come together on a
Are we
document. We
bumping
can
up
all-
against a timeline though?
well, that's what,
Is that-
can we just hang
We're
on?
bumping up against.
Yes, we are, we are.
We are.
Betty, can I go next in front of you?
Sure.
Okay. As we said at the beginning of this meeting, I understand all this is important, and I'm not trivializing, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. But we have an issue that we need to get this document, independent how it's organized, that has a reflection of all the things we voted on to be changes. We then can entertain reorganization. But the warrant opens on July 9th. It closes on August 25th, I think.
I think it'd be a lot of,
No, it closes earlier than that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we are up against a pretty tight deadline. So when we have to get those changes in. So that. If the committee is in support of it with Martha's suggesting. That's what we're working from. But I think somebody has to come to the committee with that document with those changes. Because. I mean, I'll give you the Word document. You're welcome to go pick the stuff up, cut and paste to your heart's content. What is?
Just want to take a little bit.
No, I'm not trying to
Okay.
interrupt you, I just.
Okay, I'm sorry.
want to speak after.
What's the dates? Just tell me the dates.
Well, this is what I have written down.
Yeah, it's in my,
It opens on July 23rd. And it closes on August 9th. That's what I have.
oh, maybe that's the way it is. Sorry. I knew I had the 9th in my
I
head.
thought the document.
So I'm, I'm all for that, but I don't want us to lose sight of this task we have before us. Independent of how we kind of do some minor modifications to the structure, is we have this task before us and we need everybody's help to go look at it. This document, the one that says 6/14/24, and look at your minutes and look at your personal notes and come back. And if you come up with stuff, send it to me. It doesn't have to wait till we come to the meeting. Because if you give it to me ahead of time, I can produce that new document with those changes that we've missed. I think that's priority one. And then this other stuff I think is important. I mean, but we need to realize that we're getting to the point where we have to have a document that we can start writing the articles for the warrant for town meeting pretty quickly.
Mr. Hanlon, then Ms. Volchak.
So this is a question, it's a process question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, Betty.
Go right ahead, Betty. I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go right
No,
ahead.
that's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon. I'll go after you.
Okay, so it's a process question. You know, they open and close the warrant, and then they issue a draft warrant. And the draft warrant is usually fuzzy, there's not a lot of detail.
They've stopped that. They have stopped that. It's now locked. That's it. No more fuzzy, no more reserving articles. No,
Well, that was my question.
no.
So we can't reserve 11 or 12 articles.
No.
against the meeting.
No, you can't just, I thought the same thing, historically, they've done that in the past, but no, it's no longer
Okay.
a procedure that they
That's
do.
the process question.
All right, Betty, go right ahead.
So I'm just a little confused as to how confused this has all turned out to be. We've gone through all of the changes that all of us voted on, all of us wanted to make. Len is right, we're in a time crunch now, so I don't understand why there are such substantive changes now when this table of contents, like he said, is exactly what this committee voted on to put forward.
No, in
So-
fairness, we did not vote on this. We did not vote on this.
Well, you didn't vote on the table of contents, but everything that is in there, we voted on, correct? All of the language that's in there, we
Correct.
voted on.
And Ms. Votran is
Just-
not proposing that we change language. She's proposing that we change the order. The order is something that the committee has not voted on.
And these are the first times that we've shared it.
Well, no, they were shared 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's why. I
They were
said
shared
times.
and I'm not arguing any, about your time. But understand, there's been immense amount of time invested in this by some of us. And I'm not saying we're not ready to keep investing the time, but we have a reality that we have to deal with, and we can't just ignore the reality. The reality is there. There's some things there's stakes in the ground, and when you come to those stakes, you either can hop over them or they can trip you up. And I would like to be able to hop over them and not get tripped up by them.
Mr. Waller?
Martha, do you think that you can put together a doc that will reasonably change the minds of all of us on your reorder?
Well, I hope so. I don't know for sure, that's for certain,
Because you are
but.
asking a lot to reorder, like Mike had said. And that, I just wanna make sure that we're investing the time and waiting so that you reorder everything.
Well, I'm not gonna reorder everything,
Well, majority of the first, it's, by the way,
but
the way Mike put that together, it's your reorganizing, or ordering a majority of the both executive and legislative side of this doc.
And the election side.
There was some other.
Yeah, so that's a big lift.
do you think it would be changed? I am recommending that the election section be toward the end as opposed to
It's even a bigger lift.
statutory created public bodies and. And
Well, those are the-
so my question is, why is elections chapter 4?
But Martha,
Because
this is a
everybody,
big lift.
because let me answer Martha's question. I put elections number 4 because again, as I continue to do this, I did things based upon my understanding as to town residents. Looking at this document, town residents. These are the things that all town residents will do. All town residents are entitled to elect somebody. So I put elections up where I started again. Powers of the town are the powers of the town, that is universal. Town-wide elected boards, that is universal. The legislative branch, okay, that is slightly yet less universal because you elect people in sections, but everybody in town will do that. Elections are something that everybody does. Everybody wants, if I'm a town resident and I want to understand something important about the town, What are the things that I wanna know? I wanna know about the elections, I wanna know about voting. So I put voting up there, because one of the things we keep talking about this town is the fact that people don't vote. So we should make it a priority in our charter to put the voting section up front. The things that got moved to the back, then again, are the bodies, the people who get appointed. Because understanding more about appointments is getting into a deeper dive. It's not something that every town resident needs to know. They need to know who do I vote for? And when do I, or how do I vote? How do I handle votes? Those are the priorities. The people who get appointed, that's an option. And that's why it's prioritized that way.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's something that I can understand. Martha,
And I understand it too.
yeah, you're gonna have to do the
Thank
same
you.
type of thing, I mean, kind of, sort of.
Right, well, I'm not recommending at this point, I feel comfortable with where elections is from that point of view. I'm obviously interested in people voting and can see that point right there. But I would still like to attempt to change, if it works, what my motion was. And that means picking up the pieces, putting them wherever, regarding the two authorities. Because
Alan?
that's what I see. right
One
now.
second, Betty. Okay, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Lawler, then you can go, Betty. Mr. Hutchinson, to this discussion, go right ahead.
Yeah, as far as putting things together, just logistically, if Len gives me the Word document, I can create a raw text document that's numbered by the same mechanisms, but not numbered by Microsoft Word. And that would enable Martha to move chapters around without changing text of any sort. And it would also allow for the insertion of rationales. You could create a table. My concept is to create a table that has section and chapter and section numbers, text language, and then rationale / impact or some other category that would allow you to comment and would allow Len then to reset based on Martha's rearrangement.
Yeah,
Let me
I
strictly, let me ask. Is that
yeah,
something we
I mean,
can-
basically what I need is, I don't need a whole bunch of fancy stuff.
No.
What I need
the
is-
raw stuff.
I need you to just, if you're gonna switch 2 and 3,
Yeah,
you're not just switching it in title only. You're going in the document and you're picking up, cutting and pasting and moving it. So don't worry about the section numbers, don't worry about all that. But moving it where you want it to be, and then, of course, if you're creating a new chapter, that's gonna be elections and stuff just for the housing authority and the redevelopment authority. I don't know.
well,
But I mean, we
Well,
need
what's
a
in there
document,
already?
you have to understand, we need a document. That we can have to give back to you guys to say, this is what we're voting on,
okay,
and give that, but like I said. I know all this is important to Martha and everybody, but the most important thing, I'm gonna keep repeating it, is we need to make sure. Forget about all this stuff, I know it's important, we wanna deal with it, but we need to make sure that everything we voted on over the last year. And even though I wasn't involved with it, I will apologize that we don't have a good, clean document right now. And we need everybody's help to go do that. I mean,
And I will.
Larry, I mean,
help with that
Steve's eyes are
during the
gone.
next 2 weeks also.
Steve's eyes are gone. We're sending him down for his CNI.
well, no,
also.
I can.
And so
Person
we
at a
need to,
time,
we need
yeah.
to get this done. And so, let's do that on the existing document. Because if you give me a document that you reorganized, we'll figure it out.
Alright. Mr. Lawler, then Betty, and then we're gonna make some decisions on the next meeting and what we're gonna be prepared for. Mr. Lawler, go right ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Based on what I've heard over the last 45 minutes. On Martha's recommendation to reshuffle and reorganize. the major components of sections 2, 3. And other sections. I think that it's a little too much quote unquote surgery right now. I would like to make a motion to vote on Martha's suggestion. Put it to a vote of the committee.
Second,
Do that.
So the motion about 10 minutes ago that Len wrote down, you wanna
Yes,
put that back on the table?
yes.
And Benny, did you just second that?
I did.
Okay. All right, so now it's back on. Is there any discussion on that, or do you wanna go right to a vote as a group?
I think we should go to a vote.
Seeing no discussion,
Let me call the roll.
we'll call the vote.
So we're voting on
Just-
Martha's proposal.
I'm sorry,
I'll read what,
he's gonna reread it so that everybody's fresh in their mind.
the motion is to change chapter 2 to chapter 3 and label it executive. Then change chapter 3 to chapter 2 and name it legislative. The moderator will become part of the new chapter 2, as I call it. We keep the planning board, school committee, and the select board in chapter 3. And then we would deal with the housing and redevelopment authority at another time.
Is everyone in agreement with that? That's the motion we had 10-15 minutes ago.
I think that, my motion, can we have an unofficial one, kind of, sort of, before we?
No.
I don't think you can now that the motion has been now seconded.
Thank you.
So no further discussion. What was just read, we're gonna call the vote. Mr. Bolton?
No.
Ms. Cavaco?
No,
Mr. Costello is no. Mr. Hanlon?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
No, okay. Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Waller?
No.
Mr. Levin?
No.
Mr. Pizer?
No,
And Ms. Voltrain?
Yes,
Okay, my unofficial is 7 yes, 2 no.
No, the other way around.
abstentions.
The other way around.
Oh, I'm sorry.
7 no, 2 yes.
I'm sorry, you're right.
7 no.
7 no's, 2 yeses, and no.
Let's-
so thank you all for the discussion.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for the discussion.
You're welcome.
No, I think it was a healthy discussion,
Things
and,
came out of it.
is there anyone else that has any, motions or potential motions or suggestions on the document we have in front of us tonight?
yes.
Mr. Pizer, go right ahead.
It is time. And my suggestion is that this committee accept as the sense of the committee. At the next meeting, we finish. That is the end of our discussion of the document, and that we commit to that. You can have a vote, or you can just accept it as the sense of the committee, but we're running into the deadlines that Mr. Levin has been presenting, and I think it's time.
No, I think it's a great suggestion, and I think we can do it as a consensus. I think everyone knows time is getting short. Next meeting, and I would propose we have next meeting, next Tuesday night, the 25th. Try to tighten up the timeline, and we get the final discussion, the final, up or down vote on this document by the close of the next meeting. For Mr. Pizer, I agree. Ms. Voltrain, go right ahead.
And so am I right in understanding that what Len wants between now and then is anything that we see from our minutes that haven't been included in here?
All eyes on the documents, and just, you don't have to mark something up. You can just, you can say on page so-and-so. Or if you do want to mark up your document, take a picture of it with your iPhone and just send it off to me. And I will do my best to consolidate all those changes into the document we have here and get it out to you as quick as possible. I mean, it's Tuesday and it's again, next Tuesday. So the sooner you get it to me, the sooner I get it back to you.
So what is your email, Len?
Oh, you could just send it to it's SAMBUCA@mac.com, MAC.com.
You should actually send everything to Michelle.
Michelle will distribute.
Oh, okay,
That's probably best.
okay, that's fine.
quick question.
Go
just,
ahead, Betty.
so even if there are people are saying that there's gonna be changes, or there may be changes, or whatever it may be, we will have to take a vote on those changes at the next meeting before it's finalized, correct?
Are you talking about the stuff that we're trying to see if we left out?
Well, whatever someone sends you that says, oh, you missed this or you missed that, we have to be able to say, yes, we did miss this, and here's the language, and yeah, I mean,
No.
yeah,
Betty, this is stuff we've already voted on. It's in the minutes. It's not going through the document and looking at something and say, oh, this should be this. This is just stuff that's been documented in the minutes for the last year. To look at your minutes, look at the document you have.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, will you verify that information and
Oh.
report it back to the board?
Yes,
Okay,
and then we don't have to vote on it. What we have to vote on,
Correct.
as Larry suggested, is the final document. This is the vote of the committee on this final document. That's gonna be the basis for
100%.
creating the warrant articles for town meeting.
right.
Mr. Bolton and then Ms. Bolton. Oh, go ahead.
This is what I
Bolton,
can
go ahead.
understand is that this is there's a lot of things that are missing from here. And so are we gonna have the time at our next meeting? Hopefully, you know, I'll work on it as soon as I can. And so that we can, committee members can have the document at least 2 days before the meeting, if not
I'll do
3.
my best, but the only things that are missing is if it's not in the minutes, it's not missing. That's all we're doing. We're looking at the minutes and saying, oh, this T didn't get changed from a lowercase to an uppercase or something. We're not adding any more, there's no value added here. It's just simply looking to make sure that we've got everything in this document that we voted on over the last year that's part of the official minutes for the meetings.
I have looked at it today,
Okay,
and got up to page whatever, I don't know where I got, before, I didn't do elections, sorry, so.
That's fine.
Right before that. Yep, through.
Do your best.
Through caucuses.
Right.
And there are things that, I think were missing.
It could very well be,
So,
but I think there was a
and-
problem in the transition of the old clerk to the new clerks and things from the administrative assistant, things that we've left out, but we've voted on them, I think is the point, Mr. Levy.
Yeah, so that's why I haven't had a
So we're
chance
gonna put them
to
in.
check with the minutes.
right.
And so one of the things is the way the town manager job description, remember, we decided not to get into that, and we didn't make any changes in everything about the town manager.
Yeah.
But we did say on page 20 that we would look at the changes that the town manager made for the commissioner's document. And it's so much better. I don't see why we wouldn't use that, but we haven't talked about that yet. So it's in here on whatever page.
But we're
So
done
that's-
talking about it all, aren't we?
We had that
Oh,
discussion.
next meeting.
We're not gonna substantively change, we're not going back, to go back to the commissioner's document and change the town manager's role.
It's not changing the role. It's reorganizing how it's presented. That's, I mean, just,
But it,
you can, oh, it's not this
wow,
document.
just get this stuff over there.
I will.
Yeah, one,
Again, I'm gonna reemphasize. This is the only thing we're doing here is looking at the minutes, asking everybody to look at their minutes. And if everybody sends me in something that was missed and everybody sends it in, that means we missed it. If you send something in and I go look at the minutes on my own, with my own 4 eyes, and I see it and it looks like it was missed, it'll get added in. But we're not going back and change and starting to deliberate or whatever, debate,
yeah.
debate, whatever, that we should change the words in this document. I mean, we're beyond that point. We've already voted on it. It's moved on. you know, we're at the point where we need to get a document that we can then all submit to the, we, you know, we will have that document next week. But, you know, we hopefully can vote on it and say, this is it. This is the document where you're gonna use to go to town meeting.
And we're expected to vote.
I think
That's
that
up
was
to
the
him.
suggestion that Mr. Pisa made. I think that as a group, we sort of had a consensus that we would agree with that.
Sure, I mean, Mrs. Cavaco said we all needed to vote yes. Unanimous.
That would be the best
No,
thing to have happen.
no one's vote is dictated.
Yeah.
So just say that.
Yeah.
No reason to be just saying, that's a fine statement,
Okay.
that's not necessary.
Mr. Hannah?
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna take exception to something that Mr. Levin has said.
Okay.
I understand the time constraint. If we're gonna get this on the warrant for the fall town meeting, I understand that. And if somebody in this committee wants to reopen a subject or a topic, whatever, doesn't like the structure, doesn't like the language, they ought to be able to make that motion, get a second, have a discussion, and if there's support for their position, like Ms. Votrain, then we'll reopen it.
I think that's a good point. You're right. As a committee, we'll do that.
I'm not, that's not my position to decide that. That's Al's position.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about my position of trying to get this document in the best shape.
And
we can.
I understand.
Okay.
I
If
got
if
that.
that happens next week, and what I would hope would be our final week to nail this down. If that happens, we'll deal with it as we properly should in a meeting. And if it comes up and gets voted, the proper motions and seconds, and then we'll vote on it accordingly. I agree with you.
Okay.
I don't wanna snuff that out.
I-
Ms.
you know-
Bolton, go right ahead.
As I recall, when we were discussing the town manager, part of the, charter months ago, we said that we would bring forth what the commission had done because it was so well organized. It's not different, it's organized differently, not a content difference that I'm aware of. So I would ask you all to look at what happens to be the center whole of the commission's document. And it's beyond me, why we wouldn't adopt that way of presenting.
Well, we'll look at it, we'll look at the
Information.
minutes and make sure that if that was said, and we said we're gonna readdress it, I'll look at it.
I don't know, it's probably not in the minutes because. our
Well, it's
discussion-
probably on a video, it's probably on the tape. If that was said,
I have
we'll
no idea
address it.
what meeting it was.
Mr. Lawler first and Mr. Hanlon, go right ahead, Martha.
Are you saying that you should go back to the commission's? Let me see, that doc right there,
Yeah.
that doc was, somewhat thrown away.
Well, this
We
is what the
threw it-
manager offered.
Yeah, but we threw away, when we started this commission, when we started this, we all came to an understanding that that document somewhat did not exist. I mean, that was
As
my
you recall,
understanding.
I didn't,
because
say-
we
I
were-
didn't agree with that.
Well, we were.
No, you may not have agreed with it, you're right, but I think I remember like Mr. Lawler, that was early on, and that may very well be in the minutes, that I think as a group, we ought to not be going back and forth to that
We
document.
did, I'm telling you, but I wanna take the floor, please.
Okay,
That document. When we started in the beginning, I thought we all agreed that we were starting fresh.
We
That's
did.
what I thought. And we all were on the same page. And I think it's very unfair, Martha. Here it is, 11th hour, end of our cycle, 18 months. You're bringing up that document. I think that's very unfair. I think, I'm very disappointed.
Well, I don't mean to do anything that's unfair, but I don't remember ever taking a vote related to what you were talking about. And I distinctly remember saying at the time that I did not believe in reinventing the wheel. And I don't,
We were.
and I would
gonna start-
never be, nobody can ever tell me that I can't look at this. and
No,
get what
Mark, I respect you and looking at that document, but we as a team. Took that document, we said, we're starting fresh. And I think it's just very unfair right now to bring that into play. I just really do feel it.
Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way.
And Mr. Wallen, Mr. Hanlon? You are handing your hand up to Mr. Walton.
My recollection is similar to Mr. Lawler's recollection. We discussed it early on. Obviously, that document exists, everybody knows it exists. But as far as, based on my recollection, I haven't been at every single meeting, but I don't think that document has been opened or referred to once since that conversation early on. So whether it's fair or unfair it doesn't mean anything. It's over and done with. There was no vote, I don't believe.
There was.
Although-
Well, no,
Hang on a second, Mr. Hutchinson.
But it was a sense of the group, as Mr. Lawler said, to start afresh. And, so as far as I'm concerned, it's there, it's a historical document, but that's all it is.
Very good, Mr. Walton. Go right ahead.
It's irrelevant. The simple issue was that town manager's responsibilities were raised. We as a committee discussed them. And it was decided as a committee
I already have those thoughts.
not to change.
Dude, they're in the I just looked, they're in the laundry room.
Can you mute that, please?
I don't know who that is.
Who is that?
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry for the interruption.
It was the vote of the committee not to change the language in the charter.
So I don't remember, I wouldn't have brought it up, but if I knew that it was a vote of the committee.
Whether you brought it up or not, that was the vote of the committee. I had actually made suggestions to change part of the town manager's language, and that was said, no, we want to keep it the same. And I have been at every meeting. Now, I don't remember whether or not I voted at that meeting. I was an alternate at that time, so I don't remember whether or not I voted at that meeting. But I do know that we discussed the town manager's position and the responsibilities, and the vote of the committee was not to change the language. We did not change the language. That was the vote of the committee at that time.
And I am recalling partially what you're talking about.
I know, I certainly have no objection if what you're suggesting is that the language that is in this document, and again, I'm not gonna address why it's that language is the same as what we have now, but reordered in a better fashion. If we want to look at that, there's no objection. That's a motion you should bring up. And I would make sure that I would, rather than ask us to go back and find our copies of that, I would specifically identify what the language is that you want to. This is I want to substitute this language for this language. That's the only way we can do it as a group. Make that proposal and we can certainly vote on that. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But we did not, there was never an agreement that we would substitute that language, nor was there ever an assertion that, oh, we literally went through the town manager section as we did every section of this charter. And we discussed it and there was a committee vote. I recall it very well, because again, as I said, I had changes and those were not adopted either.
Okay, Mr. Hutchinson, you still had something?
Yes,
Go right ahead.
I was at a funeral in Wisconsin when that discussion happened, I think, about the town manager description. But the most recent, at the beginning of the process, I was asked to read in the preamble from the commission's document. And was, that David just said, we're not gonna deal with that. That's the last that I remember anything being proposed from the commission's work.
And that's probably very consistent when we talked about the fact that we were gonna start fresh in that document. was worked on by others, but
Yeah,
it
he
was
just-
not gonna enter into a lot of,
There was no vote. I mean, David just dismissed it.
oh, okay, then well, I'll go back to the minutes, maybe with the help of Michelle, and I'll try to find out the history of that, we can make sure it's been covered. Mr.
Alan?
Lawler?
Yeah, wait a
Oh, I'm
minute,
sorry, Betty, right after Mr.
There
Lawler.
was a vote.
No, so it was first.
It was-
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty, go ahead, you were first, I apologize.
I mean, I believe that I do recall that we did vote to not change the town manager's job. I believe the consensus was, I mean, the charter commission failed in epic form. And there were a very few things that I think this committee discussed that may have worked or may not have worked. But the bottom line is that our residents didn't want the charter commission language to be in it. I think going back now is just gonna create more issues. I mean, if there's a substantive a change to some of the language that we have already had in our meetings and voted on, and I also have not been to every meeting, but I do read all the meeting minutes that come out of it, and when they send it out every week, I mean, it's just, we need to put our changes forward for the legislative branch to vote on. They've already voted on the charter commission, which failed, like I said, in epic form. So I believe that was the thought process when we move forward on a fresh, clean slate, because the residents of the town didn't want it. So it was our charge to make it better.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Lawler.
So, Steve, are you suggesting that we go back and, look at that language in that document, and if it is quote unquote better, then we inject it?
I see no reason not to. I'm about to do something that everyone's gonna get. I actually have two things that we missed, having gone through this in as much painstaking detail as I have over the last 3 weeks. Having read this charter, our existing charter again, another 10 times to add to the over 100 that I calculated, I have read it already. I've noticed that we have things that we as a committee did not address this time because of other things, we have to catch up. So I don't have a problem if the answer is, if what Ms. Botrain is saying is that, look, I'm not asking to change something substantively. I'm simply saying that there's a better order for these things. That was, and again, Ms. Kavako is correct in terms of the former charter. I don't care about the former charter. The proposed charter. It has nothing to do. I don't care where the form comes from. If one of us had just come up with that same order out of our heads, it's irrelevant as to where it comes from. If there is better language that can be proposed, then we should look at it. Because the charter that we present should be the best document that we can come up with. And if better language is available, and I don't care what its source is, if better language is available, it's worth considering. I just think we just can't do it on the fly next week as we need to come up with these things. If it's something that someone says, oh, you know what, as I was going through this, I noticed this sentence, we're missing 2 words, that we can do on the fly. An entire reordering of a section, especially one as lengthy as the town manager's section, that's not something we can do on the fly. That's something we need to review in advance and be ready to go and talk about.
But Mr. Bull, just, I'm extending my question to you.
Yes, sir.
I'm going back to what Len had said. Is that we've already discussed these issues. We've already discussed this format. We've already discussed, that kind of format. We've already discussed what is in the document.
We
and
are,
to change what is in the document as you're suggesting.
we're,
I think it's opening up a can of,
you're absolutely right. It is. It's potentially opening a can of worms. But you know what? We're a committee. And as a committee, we can simply make our determination the way a committee makes a determination. If someone has a proposal, they put the proposal out there, we can, and I could legitimately say, you know what? I think this is better language, but I also think that the time to bring it up should have been 6 months ago, and I'm gonna reject it. Everyone has that right to do whatever they wish to do with that, but we are a committee. No one is dictating how anybody else proposes things. I think that it is appropriate for anyone to, like I said, I'm about to do just that. I'm literally, and again, I'm literally talking about 2 sentences. But I'm literally about to say, you know what? Now having gone through with all of the changes we've made, I think that something is missing and needs to be added back in, or if someone says, now with all the changes that we've made and the fact that we've moved the town manager to a different section, it would make better sense to order things in another way. I think that's worth hearing, whether we decide, we can always decide not to proceed. But it's worth making sure that somebody's voice is heard.
Let's get to definition.
And then I'll go to the definitions of it.
And the winner is,
Ms. Johnson, did you still have a comment?
No.
Okay. Betty, is your hand still up?
no,
Okay. Steve, you wanna do that now?
Very, very.
Sorry, it's
quickly.
not up.
Very
can't-
quickly. So, there are 2 definitions. There was one definition that we have that's incomplete in our charter, which just literally needs 3. If you go to, like, go to our, whichever document you want, because it doesn't make, because the definition sections, if you go to small I. So I'll find it.
what page?
I'm gonna take a look and find exactly which page it is on.
It's on page 5.
It is on page 5.
Small I,
Small, it's actually page 4. Precinct.
Oh, paragraph.
It is line 125 in the document. Precinct. The word precinct shall mean the areas into which the town is divided. Is divided for what purpose, by whom, by how? It's an incomplete statement. All we need to do is we should add the words, it should say, in which the town is divided for voting purposes. It was just an incomplete statement. Now the other one, the one which is an add, this would be an add.
well, that's an
Just
ad.
before you get into that, do you wanna vote them together
Can
or
we,
separately?
yeah, we could vote on that one.
Let's
Okay.
put them together. So,
All right.
I
so
move
the end of I, you're gonna add to the end.
for voting purposes. And that is my motion. I so move.
Second,
Second.
Okay. Seconded,
I beat you.
Mike,
So we're
Hammond
gonna do, we're
seconded,
gonna
any
do all these,
discussion
we're
on
gonna do
that?
these individually,
Yeah,
right?
there's only 2. so we
Okay.
can do that.
No discussion, everyone's fine with that, and everyone's found I on page 4? Okay, go right ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Made the motion?
I made the motion
Okay.
and Mr. Hanlon quickly
Seconded.
seconded.
Okay.
I know you're trying to move things along here, Alan, but all votes by this committee have been by roll call.
And they're going to continue.
Yeah.
It's going to be, but
Oh,
I
I
think he's
thought you
gonna,
were-
he's gonna lump the second suggestion into the vote.
Okay.
Is that acceptable with the committee?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Bolton.
In our charter, we have made a conscious change. We have changed. We've made, where it said town meeting, we've now said representative town meeting. And that's appropriate for our form of government. However, there are several instances in our charter where we separately have to define the difference between the
Town meeting, the meeting, and town meeting, the body.
exactly. The representative town meeting is the body, but town meeting is the event at which representative town meeting.
And then there's town meeting
deliberates.
history.
Correct. So I think we actually need to have a definition that is just the words town meeting. And I'm proposing that should say town meeting shall be,
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm creating new,
Oh,
So this
creating
is gonna
new.
become
It'll go into wherever alphabetically.
it's
town
R.
meeting. Yeah,
Steve,
yes.
if I could, I think we're impinging on Mass General Law, and I think I would prefer if you held off on this definition until our next meeting.
I will defer on that. I don't think I am. I think that but we can talk about it. We can talk about this offline. That's fine.
Okay,
All right, so at this time, I'm gonna defer that second one till next meeting. So we have an open motion. Do we want to resolve the
Yeah,
first one at this time?
just, yeah, deal with the other, but
You ready?
Yeah, Mr. Bolton.
yes,
Ms. Cavaco, we're going on the first suggestion.
Yes.
Letter I, yes, okay, Mr. Costello is yes. Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler.
yes.
Mr. Levin,
Yes.
Mr. Pizer,
yes,
Ms. Beltran.
Yes,
Okay, very good. All right, while we're doing definitions, if anyone else, does anyone else have any suggestions this time? I have one that's sort of been bothering me throughout the whole process. And it's right above the one that Mr. Bullock talked about. There would be H, multiple, member body. And I think there's an issue where we talk about the town political committees. I would like to have that 4 words written at the end after town meeting as an exclusion, so that's not brought up as a potential problem in the future. Because I think it rubs, the way it's been handled now, it's the way it's always been. Somebody sent down a notice way back and that's exempt. I think we should memorialize it somewhere. So I think at the end of multiple body commission, multiple member body, the 4 words or town political committees should be there as an exemption. And I think that solves the problem for legal problems in the future.
Town political committee, what does that mean?
It says in a few places in the charter that you cannot hold 2 elected
So what you're
positions
saying-
at the same time.
So what your words would be is,
But we've glossed over the fact that you, and many people do hold 2 elected positions in town. One of them is a town political committee.
okay, I think the easier answer to that, I understand your point, Alan.
Yeah.
What if I were to say, so reading from line 122, the words multiple member bodies shall mean any board, commission, or committee or subcommittee, and afterwards subcommittee put in of the town. Because the political are not town committees, they're not bodies of the town.
very good.
They're not, but my problem is on a legal.
Well, that would be it.
The town is running the election.
Whether the town runs,
Townspeople are paying for it.
whether that town may elect to do that's what they do, but they still would not be bodies of the town. So you could be, as long as you can't be a member of a body of 2 elected bodies of the town. But you can be a member of the town and of a.
No, if you look further in the charter, you cannot hold a federal position, you can't hold a state position, and you can't hold a town position, you can't, it says it's.
But the political parties are none of those. They're technically private clubs. Being a member of the Democratic, the Republican, the Green Party,
I think what he's saying now is by putting the words of the town, right?
Yeah, if that takes care of it, I'm fine.
Basically,
I think
it's
it has to
saying
be addressed.
It's, yeah, but that's addressing it.
Okay,
I think, and I'll give you my explanation. If you say of the town, it's defining what those committees are part of. And the political committees, no matter which ones they are not officially part of any town government or any structure. So by saying of the town, you're basically saying it's just committees that are part of the town.
well, if that's the thought of the committee, then I'm fine, but I'm gonna tell you that the fact that resources are being used by the town to run the election flies in the face of that.
What do you mean, use it to run water like? Oh,
Well, that's a different issue.
That's a different issue, that's something.
But the fact of the matter is it's happening.
Right.
So if it's a club,
That's
call
probably
it a
gets
club and treat it like any other private club in the town. But when you start introducing taxpayer money to run the election, it crosses over, in my opinion, that it could be a legal issue at some time. And I think at this time, we should just exclude it. Or if your thing is strong enough, I'm fine.
So how would you frame it again?
I would say where it says at the very end of that definition, but shall not include town meeting, I would put the phrase, or town political committees.
Well,
Alan.
Yes, go ahead, Betty.
I'm just confused and please excuse my ignorance. Whether you want to do it now or, give me a call. I'm trying to wrap my head around where that is happening. Because obviously I feel it's problematic as well. Can you, without putting you on the spot, can you explain it a little for me?
Yeah, sure, no, I apologize, I'm not as prepared. There's a chapter in the existing charter that says you can't have you can't hold two elected positions in the town. And those
I'm
two
sorry.
elected positions are counted as town, state, or federal. Now, in our very last election, we had on the ballot
oh, I see. what you're saying.
32 members of this committee. On the Democratic side and about 14 on the Republican side. And I have no problem with that, if these clubs want to exist. All I'm saying is we should have somewhere in our charter where that's excluded, because we're allowing a person to have two elected positions. In another place in the charter, we're saying you cannot have two positions.
yeah.
I think it
So
should be.
So are we saying like someone, I'm
I
sorry,
think you can make the argument that if there was a close vote at town meeting, I would say 1 or 2 votes. I think I could get someone to listen to me and say, hey, that town meeting member should not have voted because they hold 2 elected positions in the town. They have a town meeting member and they belong to one of the.
Right, but what you're saying is, by the fact that those elections are part of an official town ballot.
Yeah.
And they are elected, and they're elected for something else. It's not whether or not that political party is officially part of the town, it's that the town is basically saying, oh, we're gonna hold the election for you. And by definition, that says you're on to committees because we're holding. the
No,
election.
it's not a town ballot, it's a state ballot. We operate state elections, it's not a town ballot,
So those are not put on there by us, they're put on there by the state,
correct?
so we have no control of
But it says in our charter that you cannot hold a state position, a federal position, or a town position.
And
So let's define what it is.
I mean, we can,
Listen,
I saw Len looking at his watch. I've been doing the same. Perhaps we can try to come up.
Emergency broadcast that
it.
came.
No, there was an emergency broadcast just came,
It was lower.
we have.
Okay,
no, it was-
perhaps we could come up with language to vote on for the next meeting. But
exactly.
if I may, I would like to offer a motion to adjourn.
I'll do just that. I'll prepare myself better for Betty's suggestion, and if it's really a major issue, I'll talk about it at the next meeting. So there's a
second,
motion. There's a motion to adjourn, is a second.
Wait a minute, did we vote on?
Yes, we did,
We're good.
We
I
voted
thought
on
we were
this.
gonna do a roll call vote.
we
We did.
did, right there.
Yeah, we voted yes.
You did.
I got you, Mike, I won't get your rest.
All right, so at this time, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on adjournment? If not, I'll take a vote.
Everybody say yes?
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Ms. Cavaco? Oh, oops, you might
She's already
have.
left.
Yeah.
That was a yes. Mr. Costello,
I think
yes.
that's a yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Adjourned by.
Yeah, I got it.
Adjourned? All right, very good. I don't want any problems if we didn't do a roll
We have to
call.
go,
Unless there's objection.
we have to go look for somebody, he's lost.
It did. All right, thank you very much. We're adjourned at this time.